When we think about the forces that have shaped the world's nations, our minds naturally gravitate toward the human actors. The conquerors, the kings, the presidents, the generals, and the diplomats who have made decisions that have altered the course of history. We think about the battles, the treaties, the revolutions, and the elections that have defined the modern world. But there's a more fundamental, more hidden, and more decisive factor that has shaped the destiny of nations, a factor that has been operating for millions of years, a factor that is largely invisible to the casual observer, but that has exerted profound influence on the development of human civilization. That factor is mountains. The great mountain ranges of the world, the Himalayas, the Andes, the Alps, the Rockies, the Urals, and the Atlas, have shaped the course of history, determining where civilizations rise, where borders are drawn, and where wars are fought. Mountains are not just obstacles to be overcome. They are creators of civilizations. They are the sources of the world's great rivers, the water that sustains life, and the food that nourishes populations. They are the guardians of biodiversity, the refuges of cultures that have been displaced from the lowlands, and the repositories of minerals and resources that have fueled economic development. They are the backbones of continents, the barriers that separate peoples and cultures, and the bridges that connect them. The world's great mountain ranges have shaped the development of human civilization in ways that are profound and far-reaching. The world has been told a simple story, that nations are the product of human will, that the boundaries of nations are the product of human decisions, and that the destiny of nations is determined by human actions. But this story is incomplete, misleading, and dangerously simplistic. The true source of national power is the natural environment, and the most important feature of the natural environment is the mountains. The mountains determine where people live, where they farm, where they trade, and where they fight. The mountains determine the boundaries of nations, the location of cities, and the routes of trade. The mountains determine the destiny of nations. To understand why mountains shape nations, we must first travel back in time to an era when the great mountain ranges of the world were being formed, an era when the forces of plate tectonics were pushing up the Himalayas, the Andes, the Alps, and the Rockies, an era when the landscape of the world was being transformed by the collision of continents and the rise of mountains. The formation of the great mountain ranges was a geological process that took millions of years, a process that was driven by the movement of tectonic plates, the forces of erosion, and the action of the elements. The mountains that we see today are the result of this process, and they have shaped the destiny of the world. The ancient world was a world of mountains, of civilizations that were born in the shadow of the great ranges, of peoples who were shaped by the mountains, and of empires that were defined by the mountains. The ancient Greeks, the Romans, the Chinese, the Incas, and the Aztecs all built their civilizations in the shadow of mountains, and they were shaped by the mountains in ways that are still evident today. The mountains were the sources of the great rivers, the water that sustained life, and the food that nourished populations. The mountains were the guardians of biodiversity, the refuges of cultures, and the repositories of minerals and resources. The medieval world was a world of mountains, of kingdoms and empires that were defined by the mountains, of trade routes that crossed the mountains, and of battles that were fought in the mountains. The Alps were the barrier that protected Europe from invasion. The Andes were the barrier that separated the civilizations of South America, and the Himalayas were the barrier that separated the civilizations of Asia. The mountains were the frontiers of empires, the boundaries of kingdoms, and the battlegrounds of armies. The mountains shaped the course of history in ways that were profound and far-reaching. The modern world is a world of mountains, of nations that are defined by the mountains, of borders that follow the mountains, and of conflicts that are fought over the mountains. The Himalayas are the border between India and China. The Andes are the border between Chile and Argentina. And the Alps are the border between Switzerland and its neighbors. The mountains are the sources of the great rivers, the water that sustains life, and the food that nourishes populations. The mountains are the guardians of biodiversity, the refuges of cultures, and the repositories of minerals and resources. The world before the mountains was a world that was waiting to be shaped, a world that was waiting for the forces of nature to create the landscapes that would define the destiny of nations. The mountains are the architects of the world, and they have shaped the destiny of the world in ways that are profound and far-reaching. The hidden power of mountains lies in their ability to shape the course of human civilization, to determine where people live, where they farm, where they trade, and where they fight. The mountains are not just obstacles to be overcome. They are creators of civilizations, guardians of biodiversity, and repositories of minerals and resources. The mountains are the backbones of continents, the barriers that separate peoples and cultures, and the bridges that connect them. The first hidden layer is the control of water. The great mountain ranges are the sources of the world's great rivers, the water that sustains life, and the food that nourishes populations. The Himalayas are the source of the Ganges, the Indus, and the Brahmaputra, the rivers that sustain the civilizations of India and Pakistan. The Andes are the source of the Amazon, the river that sustains the rainforests of South America. The Alps are the source of the Rhine and the Danube, the rivers that sustain the civilizations of Europe. The mountains control the water, and the nations that control the mountains control the water. The second hidden layer is the control of biodiversity. The great mountain ranges are the refuges of biodiversity. The places where the most diverse ecosystems on Earth are found, the places where the most unique species of plants and animals are found. The Himalayas are the home of the Bengal tiger, the snow leopard, and the red panda. The Andes are the home of the condor, the llama, and the vicuña. The Alps are the home of the ibex, the marmot, and the eagle. The mountains are the guardians of biodiversity, and the nations that protect the mountains protect the biodiversity. The third hidden layer is the control of minerals and resources. The great mountain ranges are the repositories of minerals and resources, the places where the most valuable minerals and resources are found, the places where the most productive mines and quarries are located. The Andes are the source of copper, silver, and gold. The Himalayas are the source of coal, iron, and limestone. The Alps are the source of marble, granite, and salt. The mountains are the repositories of minerals and resources, and the nations that control the mountains control the resources. The fourth hidden layer is the control of trade routes. The great mountain ranges are the barriers that separate peoples and cultures, and the bridges that connect them. The mountains are the corridors of trade, the routes that connect the civilizations of the world. The Himalayas are the route of the Silk Road, the trade route that connected China to the West. The Andes are the route of the Inca road system, the trade route that connected the civilizations of South America. The Alps are the route of the Alpine passes, the trade routes that connected the civilizations of Europe. The mountains are the corridors of trade, and the nations that control the mountains control the trade. The hidden power of mountains is immense, and it is growing. The mountains are the architects of the world, and they have shaped the destiny of the world in ways that are profound and far-reaching. The power of mountains is not confined to the local areas where they are located. The ripple effects of mountain power are felt across the globe, affecting global water resources, global biodiversity, and the global balance of power. The mountains are the nodes in the global network, and their influence extends far beyond the mountain ranges. The first ripple is the impact on global water resources. The great mountain ranges are the sources of the world's great rivers, the water that sustains life, and the food that nourishes populations. The melting of the glaciers in the Himalayas, the Andes, and the Alps is threatening the water supply of billions of people, and the nations that control the mountains are the nations that control the water. The control of water is a source of power, and the nations that control the water are the nations that control the world. The second ripple is the impact on global biodiversity. The great mountain ranges are the refuges of biodiversity, the places where the most diverse ecosystems on Earth are found, the places where the most unique species of plants and animals are found. The destruction of the mountain ecosystems is threatening the biodiversity of the world, and the nations that protect the mountains are the nations that protect the biodiversity. The protection of biodiversity is a source of power, and the nations that protect the biodiversity are the nations that protect the world. The third ripple is the impact on global trade. The great mountain ranges are the barriers that separate peoples and cultures, and the bridges that connect them. The mountains are the corridors of trade, the routes that connect the civilizations of the world. The disruption of the trade routes is threatening the global economy, and the nations that control the mountains are the nations that control the trade. The control of trade is a source of power, and the nations that control the trade are the nations that control the world. The fourth ripple is the impact on global security. The great mountain ranges are frontiers of nations, the boundaries of kingdoms, and the battlegrounds of armies. The mountains are the sources of conflict, the places where wars are fought, and the places where peace is made. The control of the mountains is a source of power, and the nations that control the mountains are the nations that control the world. The global ripple of mountain power is spreading, and the world is only beginning to understand the full implications. The power of mountains is not immutable. The global landscape of mountain power is shifting, driven by climate change, globalization, and geopolitical competition. The nations that are investing in the mountains of the future are the nations that will shape the future of global power. The first critical pivot is the challenge of climate change. The great mountain ranges are being transformed by climate change, with the melting of the glaciers threatening the water supply of billions of people. The nations that are adapting to the impacts of climate change are the nations that will be able to maintain their power in the face of challenges. The adaptation of climate change is a source of power, and the nations that adapt are the nations that will survive. The second critical pivot is the challenge of globalization. The great mountain ranges are being transformed by globalization, with the opening of the trade routes threatening the traditional cultures and economies of the mountain regions. The nations that are integrating their mountain regions into the global economy are the nations that will be able to maintain their power in the face of challenges. The integration of the mountain regions is a source of power, and the nations that integrate are the nations that will prosper. The third critical pivot is the challenge of geopolitical competition. The great mountain ranges are being transformed by geopolitical competition, with the major powers seeking control of the mountains and the resources that they contain. The nations that are securing their mountain borders are the nations that will be able to maintain their power in the face of challenges. The control of the mountains is a source of power, and the nations that control the mountains are the nations that will dominate. The fourth critical pivot is the challenge of sustainable development. The great mountain ranges are being transformed by sustainable development, with the need to balance economic growth with environmental protection. The nations that are investing in the sustainable development of their mountain regions are the nations that will be able to maintain their power in the face of challenges. The sustainable development of the mountains is a source of power, and the nations that invest in it are the nations that will thrive. The future of mountain power is a future of uncertainty, a future that is shaped by the choices that we make today. Two paths lie ahead, two completely different destinies. In the first path, the world recognizes the power of mountains, invests in their protection, and integrates them into the global economy in a sustainable way. The mountains continue to shape the destiny of nations, and the nations that control the mountains continue to dominate the world. In the second path, the world fails to recognize the power of mountains, and the mountains are degraded by climate change, globalization, and geopolitical competition. The power of the mountains fades, and the nations that once ruled the world through the control of the mountains lose their influence. The question is not whether mountains will continue to shape nations. The question is whether we will recognize their power and use it wisely. The map never lies, but the people drawing it always have a reason. We just saw why mountains shape nations. But there is one mountain range that is quietly reshaping the world order. That is the next journey. Which future do you believe? Comment Future 1 or Future 2, and subscribe to Atlas Beyond so you never miss the next journey.